Jason. Hey, Jason here with a little DIY. For a little while here, I've been considering a ring light. Currently, I have 2 box lights, but I could use some center illumination. It especially helps with the green screen here. And they run anywhere from mid-60s to like $100 for a good one. So I kind of thought maybe I could make one on my own. So I found some tutorials and I liked what I seen. The only problem was none of them had a permanent solution to mount it onto your tripod. So this is where mine will be slightly different. I've seen a couple for mounting on a tripod, but it involves using wire ties, and then I want something that was detachable easy. So without further ado, here's the DIY. So the first thing you start is with a wreath ring. This is an 18-incher. I have the Amazon link. You can get it at Walmart too if you need to. Rope light, LED, daylight. And this was a specialty clamp I got off Amazon that'll hold it to your tripod. I ended up getting some like Pitmaster aluminum foil, but anything you have around the house will work. I just wanted to cut it in one piece instead of wrapping it around, plus I figured it'd be thicker. I happen to have these zip ties on hand, but I'll leave you a Amazon link in case you need to get them. So I start by pulling out the aluminum foil. Since I got the wide version, I won't have to do it in 2 pieces, but if you have whatever you had around the house, you might have to do it in 2 halves. This was barely wide enough so I could do it in 1 piece. The purpose of this, of course, is to reflect the light from the rope lights in one back out. So all the lights go in one direction. I cut it to length. You can see there's a little bit of a problem cutting aluminum foil. I had a hard time ripping it from the box. You know how they have the little scored thing, but it wasn't working for me, so I just used a knife. And then we bring the ring back. You want the reflective, the ring's kind of got this little concave thing to it. You want the reflective end out where you're putting the lights. So here I was measuring it up. And I put it underneath. Start wrapping it around. This is where I realized, since it's concave, I should sink in that part. You see where I'm sinking it in? That way it's wrapped all the way around the concave edge, I guess. And then I'll flip it back over and firmly sort of attach it to the wreath frame. You don't have to do anything fancy with this part, just make sure it's attached well. I could have trimmed down those edges a little bit, but it wasn't terribly necessary. Just make sure it's in there good. And you notice I kind of left a little blank spot there. That'll be to attach the little clamp. Of course, I'll have to cut that center thing out, so it truly is a ring after all. Now I didn't go right up to the edge of the ring because I'm gonna wrap it back over the excess. That's because you can see there's like little blank spots. It doesn't look terribly well attached. Well, when I wrap this part back over, you'll see it's on there really good. Of course, again, it's not easy to cut aluminum foil with a knife, I found. So there we have it scored, and I just had to pull it out. Now I wadded that piece up, but I suggest you just put it aside in case after you're done you need to just a little piece of foil for maybe a blank spot or something. I kind of come up to that at the end of this project. Although I'm giving you Amazon links to all these products, a lot of these you can get just at regular stores out in your neighborhood. Pretty much everything. Walmart has these wreath rings. If you're not from the United States, I'm sure there's other places that have these things, but I'm not sure where. Zip ties you get at the hardware store. Rope light you can get at the hardware store. The clamp, that you might have to order online, but if you so want, you might be able to go to the hardware store and find something that would work for what you need. And of course, you can always use zip ties. That's of course what I tried to avoid, but if you don't mind it, you can do that too. You can see that blank spot I left again, and that's where I knew I'd have to attach the clamp. And that's where you're going to want to start your rope light, is right at that spot, because where you're going to put the clamp, because you'll kind of want that to be as clear as possible. Now I started with the and you'll want to start with the inside part. The wreath ring had three wires going all the way around with cross members every now and then, and you'll want to use these zip ties at the crossbars. So you just poke through the aluminum foil, and then it'll come out the other end, and you can tighten it up. You'll use a lot of zip ties for this. Just find the next crossbar and repeat the process. Just be careful, try not to rip your foil too bad when you're making the holes for the zip ties. But it is aluminum foil, you can always patch it up. You'll kind of want to go with the natural way that the rope light is spooled. That way the curve is already there. Of course, now I skipped ahead to near the end of the inside row. You're going to do 3 rows total. So I believe, yep, here's where I'm now moving to the middle row, which I found to be the most difficult because you're kind of poking through two sides of the foil. You poke it through and then you have to go underneath and then poke through again. That's the little problem you see me having here. But you just work through it. You'll try to get these things tight, but if you don't, afterwards you can tighten everything up. Now you notice I did it right across from, on that first one, right across from the one that was for the inside row. Realize there's going to be a lot of stuff in that area, so after that point I put it in between the cross members, like halfway in between, because on the outside one I'm going to put it at the cross members again, and so that's how I'd suggest you do it for the middle, going in between the two spots where you zip tied the inside ring. As you slowly unspool this rope light, the natural curve of it from how it was the manufacturer spooled it up will slowly get a little bit out of sync. You just got to try to work with it. I skipped forward and now I finished off the middle ring, so now we're going to the outside. And again, at the outside, you want to do it where the cross members are again. That one spot's the one where all three of them are in the same kind of location, and it is a bit much for one area, so that's why all the other spots for the middle one I went in between. On this outside one, you just want to be careful not to rip the foil too bad, because I don't know, I just found it on the outside it seemed to try to rip easier. So I skipped ahead again. That's the last zip tie for the outside ring, so you'll see that's three rows of LEDs. A little bit time consuming doing this, but not too bad. Now, gosh, I don't remember the exact length of the rope light I bought, but it was far more than what I needed, and likely whatever you get will be far more than what you need. So yeah, see, but you can't cut it or anything, it's a circuit, so you can't really fit more than what you got on there, in my humble opinion. So I cut off camera a little bit here, but I just zip tie. I left a little slack because essentially that's going to sit on the floor. You don't want it hanging off of your ring light, so I zip tie it. And the zip ties I listed, they're pretty small, so you might have to put 2 or 3 of them together to be able to get it around that to tie it off. But that's the beauty of zip ties. You can get as big as you want off small ones, because it's just the locking mechanism they have. You can put 2 together to make a bigger one, essentially. See that slack I left there? Yeah, you'll want that for sure. So now you go back through and you cut the excess off these zip ties. Don't worry about being too flush. just make sure not to cut your rope light or your aluminum foil. It doesn't have to be super short or flush. And this is a good time too when I went through, I made sure to tighten each one a little more. But then you don't have those things sticking off anymore. So at this point, the lighting part, you're pretty much done. So that's that fancy clip I had, and of course I was having difficulty getting it on and wasn't paying close attention to the viewfinder in my camera, so it's a little bit off camera. But what I essentially did was kind of forced the screw down between the middle cross member, so that way it kind of held up, because the wire is just too thin for it to clamp it down. That would stay down. So once I kind of forced the screw down in between there, it would held up pretty good. And the thing to remember is, if like me, I'm putting it behind my camera, so you want to make sure that the part that clamps to your tripod is in the correct direction on how you want it. So there, I plug it in, make sure it's working, and it seems to be working. See, doesn't look very bright here because I have my box lights on, and those things are just going to drown that out, but it does the job. I wish it could have been a little bit brighter, quite honestly, and that's how it looks attached to the tripod. It illuminates just your face, and the background is kind of black. But also, it's still good to use when I'm using my big box lights to add a little center illumination for a little better even effect. The lights aren't quite as bright as I'd hoped, the LEDs that is, but that's okay, it still works. Maybe I would suggest trying to get something a little brighter maybe, but whatever, this works. So I hope you found this DIY informative and relaxing. If you don't have a need for a ring light, then maybe it was interesting watching me work. And if you do have a need for a ring light, whether it be a video or photos or whatever, then hopefully this DIY was informative for you. If you have any great ideas on improving my design, why don't you leave a comment below? If it's a good one, I'll pin it for the next person trying this project. All right, have a good evening. Bye.